What's going on, YouTube? Ryan Alex back from Dopamon again. And there were some trades today. And the Leafs were busy. We're going to start with Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to have a few other videos on the madness that was today. But before we get started on today's trade specifically, we need to address the trades they made yesterday, or trade they made yesterday, because it was arguably the biggest of the deal. Maple Leafs acquired Jake McCabe at 50% retained, so he's now a $2 million cap hit. Sam Lafferty, 2 fifth-round picks for Joey Anderson, Pavel Gogolev, a conditional first is top protected, and a second-round draft pick in 2026. And the first is 2025. We'll start with this. I think 100% just pure theft by Dubas. I'm not going to lie.
I agree, and you know what? The Leafs got what they needed. Muzzin's out for sure. They needed somebody on the back end. They're a good team, but clearly something's missing defensively, and I don't think anybody now is going to have question marks about their top four, what's going on. Uh, Jake McCabe brings it, and having a McCabe in a Leafs jersey, how cool is that?
Yeah, McCabe's back. We got a Schenn back. Spoiler alert. But no, it's crazy times right now. The biggest thing for me for both of these guys is that they have term left. Uh, Something Dubas has always been, very high on is not just getting rentals. He's got a guy like a top four defenseman now for this season and two more seasons. And
Mm-hmm.
Sam Lafferty, who's a very decent bottom six guy, kills penalties. I think he's tied for the league in shorthanded goals this year with four. I think I saw that stat. Um, he's with another year left on his deal as well. So guy like that could be the next cheap Michael Bunting kind of find where he plays really well and plays well beyond his contract. And for both of these, and especially with that 50% retained, which is probably
Mm-hmm.
why they gave up the first. Right? It's probably more so what they gave up the first four rather than just Jake
Yeah.
McCabe and Sam Lafferty on their own.
Yeah, the Leafs are, to no surprise, in a cap crunch. We're in a cap crunching world in the NHL. Every team is, but the Leafs have, been right up there. I think they had like the record for being the closest to the cap for the start of the season.
Yeah, they had
Remember
the,
that?
and then I think it was beat like 3 hours later by some team. They got like $2 closer to the cap or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, about that. Anyway, just quick on these guys. Jake McCabe in Chicago this year. He's a left shot defenseman. He's 6'1", 205 pounds. And in 55 games in Chicago, he had 2 goals and 20 points, but he was a +7, which I thought was extraordinary. I didn't know that about him. He was -27 last year, but he was +7 this year. He's not going to be an offensive guy. 20 points is, I think, really good for him and probably more than we can expect on the Leafs. Um, but just a very, very good defensive guy. Sam Lafferty, again, same thing. He's kind of overplaying himself this year. 51 games, 10 goals, and 21 points. 10 goals and 11 assists for 21 points. Higher production than we would expect from him. In Pittsburgh, a few years prior to that, like he had 34 games, he had 6 assists. Like he's not a 6 goals, 7 assists. Uh, in 10 games, 2 assists kind of player. Like he's not a big scorer. He's a really good penalty killer. He's a good energy guy, and he'll fit really well in the bottom six that they're kind of crafting over the last little bit.
Absolutely. I definitely think Lafferty's the kind of guy that Keefe would want in his bottom six. And you know how Keefe is, keeping the roster kind of, separate top six, bottom six. And Lafferty's a guy I think would fit perfectly. And, I think just with Chicago, as far as like the point totals, obviously for a guy like Lafferty, it's not as important for the Leafs. But I think with Chicago, a few guys have, been getting a little bit more ice time higher up on the roster just because the roster has been a little bit more empty. So maybe they've been scoring a little bit extra. I don't think that, offense is necessarily what they're demanding from these two, but they can both still bring it, a little bit. So, and on a high offense Leafs team, maybe one or two of them, like you said, maybe Lafferty fits into like a top pair like Bunting. Maybe McCabe plays, a top pair role, and all of a sudden he's scoring, at a half point per game pace normally. So
Yeah, just by the account of being on a better offensive team. Yeah, you're right.
hmm
Which brings us to today. So, after the McCabe trade, it was pointed out on Twitter, and I can't remember who first pointed this out, but if the Leafs were to activate Matt Murray with their team as constructed after the McCabe trade last night, they would be $1,200,000 over the cap or something like that. If they kept him on LTIR, it didn't matter. But if they wanted to activate Matt Murray from LTIR, they would have to move somebody. That's kind of what I think spurred into action today. I was at work and I saw on Twitter right after I got off work the Leafs trade Rasmus Sandin and to Washington, and my mind, I'm like, who did they get? Oh my god. The Leafs acquire Erik Gustafsson and a first round pick, not from Washington, but from Boston. That's the first round pick that they got, I believe, from the Dmitry Orlov trade. So, the 32nd pick. Let's be real. And then that was it. I was a little surprised. I'm not going to lie. And I'm like, the Leafs can't be done. That can't be their own, that's such a weird trade to make. My first
after acquiring McCabe,
Yeah.
get out Sandin, and it's like, okay, well, why? Why any of it? What was the point of that?
Yeah, and the other thing was, it's not even a money thing at that point, because that still wasn't enough money to activate Matt Murray off LTIR. Rasmus Sandin makes 1.4, Erik Gustafsson makes 800,000. Still not enough. It's only a difference of 600 grand. They need about double that to activate Matt Murray off LTIR. So I figured they weren't done. And what was your initial reaction to the Sandin trade? I know it's probably the most polarizing of the day.
It's no secret that Sandin has had contract negotiations that haven't gone great. He hasn't been too happy with overall, I think, with the organization. No, not unhappy, but just not thrilled with the way that, he's been dealt with. He's wanted more ice time. They haven't necessarily given it to him. I don't think, there's definitely room for him to have gone up, but, also room for him to improve on himself. I think is both on him and on the team. I'm not just putting the blame on the team. I think he puts a little bit of blame on the team, and you can't have that going forward. I don't think, as the Leafs, they want to win now, and giving up a prospect to win now is perfectly okay, because as much as he is great, and I think he could be even better, to get rid of him, clear up some cap space, bring in a guy like Jake McCabe. I think that's the right answer, because you got McCabe for a while too, and getting rid of a guy who might cause contract issues in the future, you just don't need that.
Yeah, there's definitely the elements of the contract. I was more surprised about the return for Rasmus Sandin. Not that he was being traded. I think if you traded anybody on defense, it was either going to be Justin Hall or Rasmus Sandin. And Hall gets a bad rep, but he's a right-hand shot, kills penalties, defensive guy. Not always in the right spot, but the coach seems to really like him. Plays a lot of big minutes, and they have a lot of left shots. So Sandin was kind of the odd man out there. What I was surprised with more so, not the first-round pick, but was Erik Gustafsson. Now, I'm actually a big fan of Erik Gustafsson. I've liked him for a few years. For those who need a refresher on Erik Gustafsson, this year, 61 games, he has 38 points for the Washington Capitals. He's an offensive guy, and I think a lot of what he's created offensively is as a result of Washington losing John Carlson fairly early in the season. They need offense from the defenseman somewhere, and Gustafsson's been able to provide that. He's struggled, though, the last few years, ever since he had his really big breakout season. This guy scored 60 points as a defenseman in the NHL. That's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. But after that season, he hasn't really got it back. He had 26 points in 59 games for the Blackhawks. Got traded to Calgary, signed in Philadelphia the next year at 10 points in 24 games. Got traded to Montreal, signed back with Chicago, and then signed with Washington this year and had a little kind of mini re-breakout. But I just don't know where he fits in the Leafs lineup, if at all. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh, okay, Dubas is just creating more assets. He's now creating, you know, now he has another first round pick to wave in the faces of other GMs and go, hey, who wants my first round pick? Give me another player. So it was definitely a different way of doing it. And this was more of a less so of a pushing for the playoffs ad kind of move and more of like an asset management kind of move for Kyle Dubas, which he's been known to do in the past. But yeah,
And I don't think you can ever be in a position where you have too many D going into the playoffs.
no,
You know, if just getting them through waivers into the minors is one thing, but like if you can have them in your organization, keep them. There's no harm in, having like 9 or 10 that you can rely on, because come playoff time, you might need them, and defensemen are incredibly important in the playoffs. So I think maybe he's a guy that can kind of slide around a little bit, kind of hide as a seventh D or something in the system, or somewhere in the system that But I think that there's potential for him to play and score a lot too. On a high another like I said with McCabe, a high offense team. Maybe he gets back to that kind of scoring. It's as a defenseman, I think it can be very hard unless you're a guy like Erik Karlsson who just creates offense so dynamically all the time that when you're an offensive guy, it's tough to create it all yourself if you don't have a good team around you that's scoring. And I think he's suffered from that a little bit, Gustafsson. And I think that maybe on a team like Toronto, maybe he does score a bit, and maybe the Leafs still have a few days until the deadline, so you can try it on the ice, and if something clicks, maybe Dubas can make another move, maybe another big move, he move another defenseman, maybe Morgan Riley's being traded, and maybe that's the the big thing there.
I was just about to say maybe he's like Morgan Riley specific injury insurance. He can run a power play. He's an offensive guy like Morgan Riley is. I don't think he'd replace him, as a
No.
Geo or a Brody or a McCabe replacement, but I think he's a pretty solid injury. As much as you can compare Erik Gustafsson to Morgan Riley, a little bit of injury insurance that way anyway on the left side. But again, like I said, not quite enough cap space to activate Matt Murray if they were going to do that, which leads us to our next trade. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquire a 2024 third round pick from the New York Islanders in exchange for Pierre Engvall. And this one hurt a little. I'm not gonna lie. I like Pierre. He's a good giraffe. He's so frustrating.
Very frustrating to watch.
He's the most frustrating player on this team, or has been for a long time. And if he goes to New York and Lou triggers something in him, this trade could look really bad, because I think Pierre Engvall has the talent and the speed and the shot to be a really, really good player. He just doesn't seem to want to use those tools on a consistent basis. But I think he's a casualty of the cap, and it's an unfortunate thing, but they're going to have to kind of move some pieces around. They basically replaced Engvall with Sam Lafferty and went, all right, good enough. And then they moved on from a much higher cap hit in Pierre Engvall.
I think Engvall is an Islanders kind of guy. I think he'll fit on the team real well. I don't think he's the solution to their problems. I don't think he's going to suddenly blow up. I think he is just who he is. Like the problem, I think with him, the coach tells him what to do, and he kind of just goes, no. And yeah, I feel like the Islanders are a very like demanding team, and to kind of get that, like elite scoring kind of out of him would be just more like, if it was gonna happen, it probably would have happened on the Leafs. He probably would have clicked in the top 6 and been able to be that kind of guy. But I just don't see it. But maybe it does. Maybe there's huge risk, but I think for a third, that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was never really used in the top six on the Leafs. That's the thing for me.
Hmm.
I remember Keefe used him once, like 3 weeks ago. He started the game with Engvall, Matthews, and Marner. And I don't know why. I think Bunting, he was just trying to kick Bunting in the ass. Um, but they started the game with him, and he looked great. He was flying. He was really playing well with the guys out there. But he is, I think, I say him what he is right now. He's a third line winger who can take some face-offs every once in a while. Is really fast. That can kill penalties really well, and it's kind of a tough asset to lose. But to get a third-round pick back for him, the Leafs were kind of barren and the draft pick cupboard after all these trades they've made. So you're going to recoup an asset that might as well be a pick for him. And lastly,
But that really does.
oh
You calculate the number again, and there's a little bit of cap space left, isn't
yeah,
there?
it's just
Just
a
a little
smidge.
bit.
It's
A
a
bit.
smidge now. Oh no, we've overshot it.
Uh,
Oh, we should go get somebody.
Yeah, who's available at around $800,000?
Exactly. I thought that they had taken the third round pick from the Islanders trade and just given it right to Vancouver, but it turns out it was wrong. The one they got from the Islanders is 2024. This is their 2023, and Luke Schenn is a Leaf once again. I love this. I love it so much. I don't think Luke Schenn is that much of a game breaker anymore, but that's just so cool to see.
Yeah, dust off your jerseys unless you threw them on the ice after a tough kind of
Yeah.
rebuild thing. I
Was he
don't believe
part
you
of
guys really.
Wafflegate?
I don't remember, but
I think it
he
was
was
part of
not there
Wafflegate.
for a very good. Yeah, they were pretty bad when he was around. So
Yeah.
yeah, dust off those jerseys. He's
You're
back.
a real Leaf fan if you know what I'm talking about when I say Wafflegate. Anyway. Um yeah, I think it's great. I think I think the narrative of Luke Schenn in was he drafted? 08?
Yep, yep, fifth.
Uh being heralded as this, next big player, the savior of the franchise, because back then every big prospect was the savior of the franchise for the Leafs. The year after, it was Nazem Kadri. Um, then, doesn't work, leaves, wins 2 Stanley Cups, and then comes back a veteran as the savior of the franchise once again.
I have returned.
Yes, I'm back. I have returned. And comes and wins us a cup as what is he, 33? I actually don't know. 33, yeah, I was
Well,
right.
32, 3, yeah.
33, he was born in November. But I think that's just so cool. I think the narrative around that is really, really awesome. Yeah. Loved Luke Schenn back in the day. It was sad to see him go. It was a great trade by, I think, Brian Burke at the time,
Hmm.
getting James Van Riemsdyk. But Luke Schenn is back. And here I know that's a lot of trades. We've made a little graphics card here. We're not going to do a big reveal. But this is kind of what I think they're going to look like. Ilya Samsonov, Wall, and Murray are their goalies. Murray's still on LTIR as recording this video, so I just have that bookmarked. Um, in practice, they were running Brody McCabe, but this was before the Schenn, Sandin, Engvall trades were made. But they were running Brody McCabe, Riley Hall, Gio Liljegren. Because they got Schenn, I've bumped Hall out of the lineup, and as you can see, we are very strong defensively, and we have a lot of depth. And yeah, I went with Brody McCabe because that's who they were going with, and I think that's good. When you think about these deep pairings.
I love it. I think it's enough. That's nobody can complain now. Really, like, oh no, did the Leafs do they have the D? Yes. Did they get the first round pick? Yeah, still. They did they make the big trade at the deadline for somebody? Yeah, they got all the pieces, and I think Toronto media can shut up happy now.
They'll never shut up. Uh,
You're right. They'll
I
never
like I
shut
like
up.
Brody McCabe specifically because they both play both sides, but Brody's the guy they always put with the new guy to kind of bring him up to speed because he's so good and so responsible. I think that's just a solid pair. I don't know how fast this will stay. Obviously, they've tried Ryan O'Reilly in a bunch of places.
Mhm.
they'll probably trade, be a bunch of different defensemen if they, don't trade anybody else. Riley Schenn, I like. Luke Schenn has played primarily in Vancouver a lot with Quinn Hughes. So that kind of is a 1-for-1. And then Gio Lilly are, guys that have played really well together for the last couple seasons. So that's a great third pair, in my opinion. Gustafsson, injury, injury insurance. Timmins and Hall, injury insurance. I don't know if they have room for any more guys. The 23-man roster is full. They don't have an extra forward, and they have 3 extra defensemen. Yeah.
And do you think they're done?
No, I don't. I don't think they're done. I think they're done making really big splashes. People are saying, "Oh, go out and get Jake Chikrin now." No, I don't think that's going to happen. More realistically, if they get anybody else, they get a decent forward. So I think your defense is done. I don't think you can do anything else other than maybe trade out a guy like Erik Gustafsson and flip him for like a third or something. But if you're going to trade for anybody, you either have to decide whether you like your goaltending or you like your forward group now. Your goaltending, I think, is solid. I don't think there's no starting goalie out there that is going to blow me away to the point where I think I can replace one of the 3 that we already have. Like, people are saying, we need a big superstar goal. There aren't any. We can't go trade for Linus Ullmark. That's not how, Boston has him. They're not getting rid of him. So we have to deal with what we have. And if anything, I think they waive that first round pick in the air. Maybe trade Kerfoot with it for cap space and try to get a top 6 winger to then push down Ryan O'Reilly into third line center, John Tavares back over to center, and kind of fill out that winger depth a little stronger. But I don't hate this lineup as a forward group. I think it's really, really good. This 4th line is scary, dude.
It's a good team. On paper, this is the best team that Toronto's ever put up.
Yeah, I think on paper, every year I go, they're better this year, and then they lose again. But I legitimately think that this is the best team that we can go into the playoffs with. I'll take this team over any one of the ones we've had over the last few years.
Over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, 2 decades. True. Don't stop it.
It's been a tough
of the Dubas
decades,
era.
Right?
Of the Dubas era, this is the strongest we've seen this group. And even if you want to bump O'Reilly to third line center, which I think is what they're eventually going to do, Yarncroc and Kerfoot can kind of flip around. You can have Yarncroc, Tavares, and Marner, who have been really good all year. You can play Kerfoot with O'Reilly and Lafferty or something, and mixing around that way. There's always people. Okay. Matthew Knies is still a possibility to bring in. I personally don't think he's going to play for Toronto this year. He'll play for the Marlies. He's going to go right to the AHL.
Yep.
Personally, that's what I think. But people are very high on Matthew Knies, and I'll give him that. So we still have a contract space. We still have 49 to 50 contracts. We can still sign him and bring him in, but I don't think he's playing in Toronto. But it's still an option if we need another forward. Do you
think it's possible he plays 1 or 2 games?
I think so, just to see him. Depending on
but
what
he's not sticking around.
Depending on what the race is in the Atlantic, if we've locked up a spot at 2 and we're not moving anywhere, I think he plays. But if we're neck and neck with Tampa Bay, or even crazier, we're like just behind Boston for some reason for first, I don't think he touches the lineup. I think he goes right to the AHL. If not, he practices here and then goes right to the AHL. But yeah, we can still move guys out too, which is just the crazy thing. We still have guys like Pontus Holmberg in the minors. We have Wayne Simmons, who isn't on this board. He's still kicking around. Dryden Hunt, Bobby McMahon, Kyle Clifford, guys who have played in the NHL and are decent depth pieces. We still have them. We didn't give up a lot of roster players to do this. This is really cool.
Yeah, and you still have the Leafs still have their first. They still have all the pieces they need. They haven't given up too much. They still, they're at the top shape that they could be.
Yeah, well,
I think it's just really good asset management by Dubas. First of all, that's the.
yeah, and we've done really well in the 25 to 35 pick range in the second round and stuff last year. So I'm not scared of the 32 if the Bruins win the cup. Now, I'm not scared of that pick being number 32. I think it'll still be a really good asset, especially in a really deep draft. They got a third round pick next year, which I really like, and they got a couple guys that have some term, and I think that's super important. They got a couple UFAs too, like Schenn and Gustafsson, and they still have to deal with Kerfoot's UFA and Camp's UFA, and possibly if they bring back O'Reilly. But that's all later. That's all down the road. We don't care. Dubas might not even be here. Keefe might not even be here. They don't care anymore. They're glowing for it, and I love this for the boys. This is sick. This is a good time to be a Leafs fan.
You can't plan for the future when you need to win now. The Leafs need to win now, and Dubas can't say, "Oh, I'm going to protect my job." I'm just going to win. Just going to play some hockey, make some good moves. And I think he's done that. He's put his team in a position to win. And hey, oh no, some contracts to deal with in the future, you deal with them.
Yeah.
You make the moves you have to make now. You get the players now, then you deal with the numbers.
Exactly. And I think they've done some great asset management here. I really like this team. Overall, I'm going to give them a letter grade. Overall, I'm going to give them a solid A over the last couple days. Overall, with the Jake McCabe and Lafferty's and everything, I'm going to give them a solid. Let's call it an A-.
You know what? I was going to say A-, but I can't say that there's anything in particular that I want to minus them off. Did they make a mistake? Did they pay too much on any case? Is anything like, no, they didn't make any mistake. I think a pure straight A is the call. I was even gonna go for that minus. I'm like, stick it to the Leafs. I'm a Sens fan, but like, you know what? No, that's a solid A. And they got the defenseman. They got another defenseman. They moved a guy like Sandin. There's so many questions around him anyway. They just, they got him out. No more questions. It's answered. They have the team they want. Whatever they got to worry about for contracts for the future is no problem because now they have the best team possible. That's a win. That's an A. Not an A plus because they didn't steal any trades. I don't, necessarily. I don't think they ran away with a crazy, crazy deal, but they made the right hockey trades, and that's just enough.
Yeah, I agree. We'll call it that. Let us know what you think in the comments if you made it this far. What do you think of the Leafs team now? Are they going to lose in the first round again? They're going to play Tampa. It's going to suck. They're a better team than last year. Is Tampa? I don't know. Is Tampa done? They just got Tanner Jeannot. We didn't talk about that. This is a Leafs video. The trade deadline is not here yet either. The deadline is not here yet. Contrary to the GM's belief, the trade deadline was not today. It is Friday. Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, I think, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. We got a lot of... Today's Tuesday. We have a lot of time left. This could still be moving. The Leafs have 2 games until the trade deadline, and then we have a game on Saturday afterwards. We play Wednesday night, tomorrow night, and Thursday night, and a part of our Western Coast swing in Edmonton and in Calgary, and then on to Vancouver. This Leafs game against Edmonton is going to be really cool. Edmonton just got a whole lot better today, too. The Leafs got better today. It's going to be a fun matchup with McDavid and Matthews and everything going off. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.